Welcome. My name's Aaron Grossman. This is Marilyn, Stefan. And in just a moment, we're going to introduce ourselves, explain who we are, but we do want to give you a sort of a bit of an agenda. So we are just two teachers. This is our first time, like probably many of you, working through the benchmark reading materials. And we thought we'd do the following. Much like in a PLC, we'd describe what we really like about the program. In that first 15 days, which we're going to discuss here, we're going to highlight the read-alouds we're going to be using, followed by kind of where we see opportunities to either elevate and bring our professional expertise to bear. And then finally, we're just going to kind of predict how things will go. And if this goes well, we'll do a second episode, and in that second episode, we'll reflect on our experience using the materials, and then we'll follow the same format, highlighting things that we like, things that we think we're going to elevate, and then, of course, making some kind of prediction about how things are going to go. All right, sort of having outlined kind of what we're going to be doing, let's introduce ourselves. This is Marilyn, and Marilyn has been teaching for close to 30 years now. For the most part in third grade, a little bit of work in first grade as well as second grade. And I think apart from that expertise of being in the classroom that long, she's done a lot of progressive work in 21st century learning. And as a consequence, she is right now part of Team Washoe County School District Teacher Consultation Group, or part of that effort. She was awarded the Excellent in Education for bringing innovative outcomes into our classroom. And I think very interestingly, and this is going to date the two of us, she was part of NELA. So if you know, in the early 2000s, following the publication of the National Reading Panel report, there was an effort to take all of that research and bridge it to practice in the classroom. And Marilyn was one of those trainers and one of those at the forefront of making sure that kids were getting the best research-based practices possible.
Thank you. And this is Aaron Grossman, and I have to say I'm extremely honored to be collaborating with you on this. Aaron has so much information to give, so much input, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. So he's been educating for over 20 years. He has taught at a title school. He's taught intermediate students. He has become an instructional coach. He has been in the office of, he moved to the Office of Performance as a school improvement coordinator, and in 2011 he was in the district's curriculum instruction department. He returned to the classroom in 2015 and now teaches third grade. He was 2017 named Washoe County Teacher of the Year, and in 2018 was a Nevada finalist.
So this is exciting for us, and again, our target is really to sort of share what we have. If you heard, Marilyn has a tremendous amount of experience, and so when we look at a set of materials like this, especially where benchmark says use your professional discretion, lend your professional expertise to a specific outcome, that's what we hope to bring to bear, and we hope that you find value in it. So with that, we've gone through this, and we've looked at our routines. What do you think?
Yes, well, I do like the setup, how it goes through each component of the program at the top for your first 15 days for your routines, your review and routines. Review, because we didn't have this program last year, so I imagine that some teachers are using some of the things as review in here, but also some of the components might be brand new for people. So I do like that it's broken down by read aloud, word work, independent reading, and things like that.
And what stood out for me is this opportunity to really establish for the students what a reader's workshop is, what a writer's workshop is, as this matriculates and this becomes part of vertical conversations. I think there's an opportunity for some real consistency throughout the buildings without compromising our own professional expertise. I like the fact that they're not dancing around a lot of the academic vocabulary with the kids and a lot of the literary terms, that they put them in front of students, and there's an expectation that as kids get exposed to them, they get to use them. And I think there's also these kind of subtle things that Benchmark does, where if you're doing a read aloud, they'll kind of parenthetically say, why don't you bridge this to a piece of content you're working with, either in social studies or science. So at least there's this tacit acknowledgement that we should be building content knowledge with kids as we're developing some of these routines.
Right, I do like that rather than dividing up reading, social studies, and science, that you do have the opportunity in some of the read alouds and some of the units in third grade and all grades actually, to incorporate the content and make it an all-day reading program, really.
Right. And then probably the last thing I'm going to highlight, which comes towards the end of establishing routines, I think in day 13, we introduce annotation. And I think that's something that a lot of teachers in the school district have been doing, but for the first time, we're going to probably have a really consistent strategy for annotating, and again, vertically aligned, so that as a third grade teacher, I can have a certain expectation of what happens next year when second grade teachers or second grade students roll into my classroom.
I agree. I like that students, when you switch for interventions or however you run your interventions, that students will see almost the same things in each classroom based on your annotation posters, and they'll carry that with them in there. It's not like everybody's teaching something different or a different style.
Right, so we both agree there's a lot alike here, and we're just giving sort of a cursory overview of what we're noticing, but I think we both agree this is a really nice floor to work from. So if we can establish some of these routines, I think we see opportunities then to be much more successful with those units when we finally launch them in just a few weeks. All right, so if we kind of know what we like, there's also these opportunities, of course, then to elevate, and you noted that just a moment ago. It says, here are some suggested read alouds, and there's a compendium, like I think it's 80 pages?
Yes,
I think it's 80 pages of read alouds, which might be a little bit daunting and overwhelming, especially as many of us are new to the program, or for that matter, you might be relatively new to the profession. So why don't we go ahead, will you share with us the read aloud you're going to use to entertain?
Okay, so the read aloud I'm going to use to entertain is Lady Pancake and Sir French Toast. This is an amazing book to show fluency. There is a theme of friendship, so it's really good to use at the beginning of the year. And at the end, you can talk about, are you Team Pancake or Team French Toast? So who are they rooting for in the story? But what's really great is that it has an amazing example of Tier 2 vocabulary. It's obviously difficult vocabulary, but you can talk about that. Words like vaulted, seafaring, hurtled, repelled, clutching, and plummeting, all about food. And so, and the theme being friendship, a good start of the year. So it's very entertaining because it's rhythmic, and as I said, you can demonstrate to students how reading with fluency makes a difference when you're reading a book, how it changes how you interpret the story. So this is a really cute one for entertaining.
That's fantastic. So I'm vacillating. I think like every other teacher, I know that we're 11 days from that first day of school and finally working with this program. So I'm somewhere between, this is called Diary of a Wombat. It's a really sweet story. Apart from, a lot of humor insofar as what the wombat does is it sort of claims it's training humans. Simultaneously, I think it introduces just sort of what you get in plot, so there's some nice character development, rising action, there's a climax, and so we can refer back to this book several times as we introduce some of those pieces of good narrative text. And the other one, and this is why I say I'm waffling, these are Ogg and Bog books, and you can guess it's two cavemen who obviously are kind of always doing sort of silly things, but they're set up as sort of chapter books and really accessible for some of your kids who might be struggling with reading, or for that matter, might be just a little bit struggling with motivation and building some stamina. So this becomes twofold. Either I can introduce this to engender some excitement among the students, or I can do Diary of a Wombat to really get to the very specific goal with read aloud of just entertaining our kids and understanding that author's purpose. All right, so if we've got, I think entertaining comes in at day 2 or 3. So day 3, day 4, what are we doing? We're persuading.
Day 4 is persuading, and the book I chose was The Day the Crayons Quit. I absolutely love the illustrations. I think the kids will too, because they look like they're child drawn in purple, and I love the voices that are in the letters to a young boy telling him why he shouldn't use all of that color anymore. So this is really good. I marked a page where I'm going to choose a mentor sentence to model the persuasion. And the color I chose to model for them was black. Black is really tired of just being the outlining color. He wants to be more present. And so I chose it because he suggested, how about a black beach ball? So I'm persuading him. I'm not going to be drawing a black beach ball. However, I am going to tell you some other things that I think you would be good at drawing, and that is me writing to the color black to persuade him to stay in my crayon box. So thought that would be a fun story for the kids, and I love that it's in the letter format because the writing component that goes with persuade is letter writing, so it models that for the students.
All right, and so Marilyn was so persuasive, I actually may switch out my read aloud in favor of that one. So I do have that with me. I also have this book. So this was initially what I gravitated to. It's called Don't Blink, and it is exactly what you would expect it to be, which is it's a child who is trying to convince its reader not to blink. And there are sort of some silly efforts to do that, as well as it does some of those sort of Escher kind of pictures in which it can be interpreted several different ways. So it integrates a number of different things while simultaneously trying to persuade its audience. Don't blink.
I like that, because when you say that, that's all you want to do is blink. Okay.
And then we finish up our read alouds with something to inform.
And the book that I'm not sure what you chose, but I chose Frida based on Toluca River's recommendation on her Review and Routines 15-day calendar. So Frida is informing readers about a young girl who becomes a musician. And an artist. She's sick one day and she's very bored, and so she learns how to draw, and it's nice for them to hear about another culture, and it kind of brings in those components as well. So that one I did not have a copy of. However, it is a read aloud on YouTube, and thought I might share it. By the 5th day, I think I could do a YouTube read aloud and stop and comment with the kids.
And then I think there are probably other opportunities where you can build that into an ed puzzle, which we'll talk about sort of other opportunities we can do to elevate instruction in our classrooms. And so ed puzzles will be certainly something we talk about later in the school year. And I brought with me Groundhog Gets a Say. And so not really timely. Obviously, it's supposed to be matched more towards Groundhog Day, but you can imagine, apart from great voice in this book, simultaneously they're trying to sort of argue the value of a groundhog apart from just predicting spring, or at least being reduced to predicting spring. So if we understand kind of the read alouds that we're going to use to elevate this program, maybe we can talk about other things that you noticed as you move through that you see I can lend some professional expertise.
So on day 2, the students are supposed to choose from a question jar after they've read one of the books they chose. So there's a fiction question jar and a nonfiction question jar, and I think it's a good idea there to include a mini lesson on Bloom's taxonomy and what a good question is and at what level the question is, because there are the basic questions. When did the story take place? That is a basic bottom level question in the Bloom's taxonomy. So I have these question sticks, and they're different colors based on skill. So green, application. So that's how I plan on elevating the questioning, or making it a little different rather than a question jar. And then I have questions color-coded here as well, also based on Bloom's taxonomy. So I think it's good for kids to start hearing more difficult questions, digging deeper into the text, and then when it comes time, they can transfer that as they start to begin to write their own questions for other students later on in the unit. So that was day 2.
And to build on that, by the way, which is absent from what I've seen so far, is something more akin to what we see in a writer's workshop, where the kids have done the writing. And then as a classroom teacher, and we certainly are sensitive to how much extra time this takes, but to take home, or at least read through those journals so you have some exemplar answers. Because where I see an opportunity, again, based on my own experience working with kids for this length of time now, we want to have kids understand really who met that expectation of they've lifted a question from the question jar, or in your case, they've answered one of these higher level questions on Bloom's taxonomy. So then if we've got all these samples of writing, let's share some of these with these kids so that the kids understand, this is what it means to meet this expectation.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because online there is a writing exemplar tab that you can click on and get exemplar samples. That is, if your students don't produce any and you want to elevate them further after they do their first writing. I think it's important for them to have the writing from their classmates, because then they're familiar with, those are the kids in my class that are doing that. However, if you want to start out, or you want to show, look how good these are, they're online and they do show different grade levels.
Great.
So that's an opportunity there.
So also on day 2, they have something where you're going to do Would You Rather? And if you don't know, especially for Washoe County teachers, and we're going to link this in the link below, there are a set of cards from our social and emotional learning department. where they've already put those prompts, would you rather, on a series of cards that you can get from Print Shop or you can print for yourself, and we'll link that below. So rather than, again, just posting a few questions, instead you can sort of you can create that instructional routine around quiz, quiz, trade, where the kids are asking each other questions and then trading their cards. And so you're highlighting a number of dispositions simultaneously while also sticking to the integrity of the program.
Okay, and then to elevate on the lift-a-line, we did find a good graphic organizer from Toluca Rivers for the lift-a-line. And actually, when I was showing you before, when the crayons quit, this was my lift-a-line. So I was going to model the sentence that I'm taking from the text letter and put it on the lift-a-line sheet, and that will help kids see how do you lift a line or show evidence from the text.
And then finally, just in terms of really getting into the meat of these materials, on day 12, they recommend that our kids start writing book recommendations. And if you are in Microsoft Teams or if you're in Google Classroom, you can actually push out templates around book recommendations. So it's an opportunity for you, and we will link some of those templates below so that kids can begin blend some of their learning experiences in your classroom. So again, we're sticking to the integrity of the program. We're just seeing opportunities to elevate the experience for the kids.
And I'd like to add on to that. There is a colleague of mine that does second grade and was in a program. Her students last year became SparkNote creators of little book talks, so that in our library you can scan a book and you'll have the student giving the book talk based on a text that they read. So you can upload the pictures from the internet and the kids are talking to recommend books. So, but they have to write a rough draft first, and then they can put it on SparkNotes, just to give a little technology elevation there too.
That's fantastic. And there are probably other things. And again, we'll talk about, this could also be a place where you could bring in Flipgrid. So if kids are going to make a series of book recommendations, they can be posting them online and kids can be responding to them. And as we integrate that technology into our classroom, we'll share some of those outcomes with you, the viewer.
Let me just clarify, it's Adobe Spark, not SparkNotes. That's showing how old I am. SparkNotes are old school. Okay, Aaron, so tell me, how do you think it's going to go over the next 15 days? What are your predictions about the review and routines and just the back to school?
So I have sort of three things that kind of jumped out to me. One, I'm really excited about the opportunity to establish some really strong foundation to work from. So I think the way that we're setting up each one of these rotations or centers, whatever you want to call them, around Writer's Workshop, Reader's Workshop, listening, some tech piece, I suspect that's going to go really well. And I think that's probably going to be well rooted in the classroom and the time frame that's outlined in the program. Similarly, I do really like the fact that you review the phonics as quickly as you do over those 3 weeks. And I think sort of a reminder of the students, you've learned this at some point in a previous grade, and we're just going to go through that. And then again, it gives us a language to refer back to as they might struggle with a particular spelling word. I can say, remember earlier in the school year, we did the following, rather than having to guess at whether they had done it in first or second grade. And so those are very positive, and I guess, we'll see how it goes. My prediction is I'm going to have to probably do a little bit more work on the writing in order to get to the outcome that's listed in the benchmark. I'm not sure there's enough there in benchmark to really get to the kind of provision or the kind of mastery or proficiency that is expressed on those first 15 days.
I agree with the writing portion. I think it's a little bit rushed in the first 15 days, and I understand they want to introduce each kind so that you can model that in depth, because that's what your first 15 days is. And I also think, for me, I'm not sure how the anchor charts are going to work. I only have so many walls in here and so many places to put them, and I do want the kids to refer to them, or for me to say, remember when we talked about being an active listener, or remember what reading workshop looks like. So we'll see how that goes.
I hope people got from the tone of this particular episode. I think we're both very hopeful about the materials. We both think that there are great opportunities for the third grade students we're going to be working with this year. Certainly, there's a generous number of opportunities to really bring your professional experience to bear on the resources. So, any last thoughts for those people who are going to be using this over the next 3 weeks?
I think balanced literacy, a little bit of everything, and then you can elevate where you need to, and you feel like your students need more in a certain area. I like that we have the option to do that.
And it's sort of the obligatory thing that I think everybody on YouTube sort of ends with, which is hit subscribe, like us if you like the video, and then, like we said, we're going to try to, best we possibly can, put everything that we've referred to throughout this episode in the comment section, so that you have a good sense of where to jump to if you need a review, or for that matter, if a particular resource resonated with you, you'll know where to click and find it. Thanks,
Great.
Marilyn.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right, we'll see everybody in about 3 or 4 weeks. Good luck with the beginning of the school year.